Ladies and gentlemen, let's move to the second and final plenary session of today, which is based on embracing emotional intelligence, a key to achieving harmony in work-life integration. The second plenary session will be chaired by Dr. R. Gobit, Visiting Lecturer, Department of Community and Family Medicine, Faculty of Medicine, University of Jaffna.
Thank you, organizing team, for the organizing such a wonderful research conference. We are already behind the time, so without delay. So let me introduce the next eminent speaker, Professor N. Shreeharan. Professor Nadarajah Shreeharan currently holds visiting professorship at King's College London, University of London, University of Jaffna, Sri Lanka, and UCSS Medical Faculty in Kuala Lumpur, and act as a consultant to the global biotechnology industry. He graduated MBBS from University of Colombo with the first class honor, and having completed the MD from PGM Colombo and MRCP UK, obtained PhD in cardiovascular studies at British Heart Foundation Department, University of Leeds. He returns to Sri Lanka to assume the foundation chair professorship in Department of Medicine at University of Jaffna in 1980, where he introduced novel educational concept into the medical curriculum, including problem-oriented medical records and objective structured clinical examination. As the foundation clinical coordinator, he also facilitated the transformation of the Jaffna Provincial Hospital to the status of the teaching hospital. Prof. Shreeharan left Sri Lanka after the consequence of the civil war, and after the period as a visiting professor of cardiology at the University of Alberta, Canada, he joined the Global Research and Development Organization at the GSK, where as Senior Vice President and European Medical Director, he chaired an integrated medical department based across the European countries with oversight for the research and development of new medicine across the multiple therapeutic areas. Prof. Shreeharan is a Fellow of Royal Colleges of Physicians of London, Edinburgh, and Glasgow, and the American College of Physicians, and he authored several publications and book chapters. For his work as an officer of Board of Examiner in Pharmaceutical Medicine at the Royal College of Physicians, and as advisor to the National Board of Medical Examiners in USA and faculty to the Scholars of Clinical Science program at the Harvard Medical University. He was awarded a global fellowship in medicine development. Without further delay, I'll call upon Professor Shreeharan sir to deliver that lecture.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your kind introduction. I think because it's my second lecture for the day, I will dispense with all the salutation and formalities and get to the talk straight away. I have to declare a health warning. I am neither a psychologist nor an expert on emotional intelligence. This topic has been given to me by the organizing committee. I perhaps have some personal and philosophical interest in emotional intelligence. But what is clear is that emotional intelligence is perhaps the single most important attribute to well-being, harmony, and happiness. So it is an important topic in a research conference, in any endeavor. So I will start by way of introduction, tweaking the title a little bit. And I've selected two words, embracing. Whenever you talk about embracing, it's something outside yourself. You physically hug and embrace someone, or you embrace a culture. But emotional intelligence is not out there. It's within you. We all have an abundance of capacity to manifest emotional intelligence. So a better word to describe is manifestation of emotional intelligence. The second word or group of words I would tweak a little bit is this work-life harmony or work-life balance. I think this word was coined many decades ago when work was tough and hard, you work in the farm, you work in a factory, well, still many unskilled jobs are hard, physically hard. So work was hard, and people use the work to get some remuneration, financial usually, monetary remuneration, to take back to their, what they call life and enjoy life. I don't think it's relevant in today's environment. Certainly it's not relevant to an august audience such as this, healthcare practitioners. So the real word, work is part of life. So the real title, just as a starting point to convey a message, I've changed it to manifesting emotional intelligence as a way of achieving harmony in life itself. Work is part of our life. Personal life is part of our life. So life experience is the key. Let's now move on to emotional intelligence. It's a very abstract concept like love and so on. So whenever you look at something that is very abstract, there is a philosophical model of approaching it. I don't want to bore you with technical terms, so they call it ontological, epistemological, axiological. So basically, I'm going to talk about what is EI, what is emotional intelligence, what are the benefits of emotional intelligence. If there are no benefits, then let's not talk about it. And the difficult part, and I'm going to struggle here, is to talk about the characteristics of emotional intelligence, how we manage it. I think we need a total half-a-day seminar to do that. So let's start with emotion. What is emotion? I've got a croaky throat as well. I don't know, talking to Surendra Kumar most of the time, it's really, or maybe COVID's coming up. So what is emotional intelligence? People have talked about the concept of mind from time immemorial. Various secular and non-secular people have talked about the concept of controlling the mind. Socrates and Plato, Jesus talked about the kingdom of heaven is within you. Lord Buddha talked about dukkha and suffering and stilling the mind, and in the Vedic scriptures of conscious awareness. So the humanity has always identified the problem of emotions and the problem of mind. But the term itself was coined much later by, I think it was Mayer and Salovey, somewhere in very, as late as 1990s, 30, 40 years ago. Now, I have been a fan of, many of you might have read, and I would advise you, there are lots of models to study emotional intelligence. My favorite is Daniel Coleman. And one of the models, I won't give you too much of scientific data. What is going to be, you will hear from me, is a conversation. It's not a scientific data, it's an experiential conversation, not just my experience. I have had the great privilege of working with, even in this country, with great people who had very high level of emotional intelligence. And I'll come back to that, how you sort of identify and develop emotional intelligence. I have learned a lot from my mentors, peers, and so on. So emotional intelligence, the term was coined to differentiate it from cognitive, cortical intelligence, IQ and so on, which was seen and still seen as the primary driver for success, worldly success. And they coined the word, and they differentiated emotional intelligence from cognitive intelligence because we all know this, that material success, cognitive intelligence-driven success, provided only temporary happiness. You can call it pleasure. It's conditional happiness. It's conditioned by that event to which you derive the happiness from. So that was the first experience of psychologists to say, no, there is something much more important than cortical intelligence. And secondly, and you would see a lot of evidence when you look at some of the great leaders of the world or institutions, one of the single most important attribute that differentiated them from the others was emotional intelligence. They had high degree of emotional intelligence. So the definition itself is very straightforward. I think many of you will understand it is an enhanced ability. As I said, we all have the ability The potential to manifest emotional intelligence is very important. So it is an ability to master our own emotions, but more importantly, to identify and respond to the emotions around us. That is emotional intelligence. And the two important words that are associated with emotional intelligence are empathy and relationships. You see, people who are very empathetic have high degree of emotional intelligence. People with high degree of emotional intelligence have good working and personal relationships. Another way, I don't like the word ego, it creates a lot of antibodies, but it is a non-egoistic intelligence. That's another word for emotional intelligence. The ego drives the self, I am the best, I know everything, and creates a lot of conflicts. Emotional intelligence, a high degree, is a non-egoistic. You are more concerned, empathy about others than yourself. And many of you would have heard in the Eastern traditions the two-arrow concept. It's there in many Eastern traditions, certainly in Buddhism. The two arrows. Generally, we are hurt by two arrows in life. The first arrow is what life throws at us all the time. You know, the pain of failing an exam, the pain of relationships breaking down, and all the problems of the world. You can manage that if you can, but something that is unavoidable, and we come up with various terms, destiny, karma, bad luck, but that will keep coming and will cause pain. That is not my intention to talk about. Emotional intelligence is the management of the second arrow, the self-inflicted arrow, the response of us to the first arrow. So the first arrow causes pain. It is inevitable. It will come. It will happen all the time. Life is all about ups and downs. But the second arrow is the one that perpetuates the suffering. And high degree of emotional intelligence helps us to manage the suffering from the second arrow. I just want to introduce this concept of old brain and new brain. You might have heard about it, something I like very much, that we have two types of brains. I'm not talking about the right and left cortex. The old brain is the brain that has been there during evolution, pre-human. It's the limbic system, the flight and fright reaction for survival. The lower animals have the limbic system. We evolved as Homo sapiens, developing the new brain, the cortex. So that differentiates us. So cognitive intelligence, I hope there are no neuroscientists here, they'll throw me out. I'm trying to keep it very simple in the sense the cognitive intelligence is cortex-driven, and the emotional intelligence, emotions come from the limbic system. But another definition of emotional intelligence that's important is the intelligent management of your emotions. So you use the cortex, your cortical intelligence, to manage your limbic system, right? That is another way of looking at emotional intelligence. Unfortunately, this is, I think, not my word. I think Deepak Chopra talked about it. We have evolved at the expense of emotional intelligence. You know, great cognitive intelligence, the conferences, research conferences, becoming professors of medicine, but not at the expense of human beings have evolved at the expense of emotional intelligence. This, I think, Chopra's quoting. We can map the human genome, send the man to the moon, have a relationship with Duke in US, all that can happen, but we have become orphans of wisdom. So the attitude is to try and develop the emotional intelligence to a greater extent. Another way of looking at it, we were talking about robots. We are a robot. Humans are robots, right, managed by the genes, the selfish genes. We are a robot, human robots. We have the body, physical body, we have the intellect, the reasoning mind and thinking and all that, and the mind, feelings and emotion. Generally, all of you will recognize the focus has been on the physical body, generally exercise, diet, managing diseases, and we have done brilliantly well in managing the intellect, studying, exams, becoming professors, making money, all that has been good. And you know this, this is not, as I said, rocket science I'm telling you. I hope what I tell you, you already know, and therefore you can identify with it. That's my intention, not to give you any scientific discourse. So, but mind has been neglected. Not now, last few years, for decades, people have understood that. that finally it comes down to improving your mental well-being and emotional intelligence. So move away just from looking after the body and the intellect and the cortex to looking after the limbic system. So that's sort of in brief, that is emotional intelligence. What are the benefits? Lots of evidence. I'm not going to give you the evidence because you can measure emotional intelligence now. It is not as objective as measuring cognitive intelligence. Cognitive intelligence, you have IQ tests and so on. But there are validated measures of intelligence, emotional intelligence, and there are correlates. And I'll give you 3 or 4 examples of definitive evidence what emotional intelligence does. People with high emotional intelligence have good leadership qualities. Not leaders, leadership qualities. The leader is a position. Captain of a football team is a leader, but has that person got leadership qualities? So people with emotional intelligence have high degree of leadership qualities. This is 1 or 2 of the only scientific data I'm going to give you. If you plot cognitive intelligence against emotional intelligence, there's no correlation at all. It's all over the place. And we know that. There are a lot of people with high cognitive intelligence have poor emotional intelligence, and vice versa. The man on the street, we call them streetwise, highly emotionally intelligent, selling, something out there in the street. So there is no correlation. However, if you take a group of people with a defined level of cognitive intelligence, people in this room, from students to staff, people who are in the university studying to become doctors, practicing as doctors, have a high degree of cognitive intelligence. If you look at that cohort and then separate those with leadership qualities, people who are followed by others, who are happy, who make all the difference in that organization, emotional intelligence is the only differentiator. So if you take a cohort of people with a defined cognitive intelligence, those with additional incremental emotional intelligence become the leaders, meaning they are happier, they are comfortable with others, and so on. The second benefit I put down here is productivity. All this I'm going to go through quickly. People with emotional intelligence and organizations which have a lot of people with EI, high EI, are very productive. This is the productivity ratio, that is, they are able to produce high output with low input. With limited resources and limited financial and human resources, the output is high. 1 + 1 becomes greater than 2. That is the equation for a very highly efficient functioning team and organization. The output of the organization is greater than the output from the individual members of that organization. If you have an organization or individuals with low emotional intelligence, 1 + 1 becomes less than 2, very disruptive, very negative. So it's very important to try and make sure, not at an individual level, but also at an organization level, to ensure we have a highly interactive, highly emotionally intelligent team and an organization. The other one is conflict resolution. Generally, people with high emotional intelligence don't get into conflicts or ideal in resolving conflicts. You might have seen this slide of mine, some of you here, a 2x2 matrix of what causes conflicts. So there is an interaction between the concern for yourself versus concern for others. Now, conflicts arise, the quadrant here, the top left, when you have a high concern for yourself, that is the egoistic, I am right, I know what is right, not the guy in the team, low concern for others, you get conflicts. The way to resolve conflict is to have high concern for yourself as well. Self-confidence, self-esteem is important. High self-esteem, but also high concern for other people's opinion. So to be in the quadrant upper right, collaboration, or at least if you can't agree, compromise. That's what negotiating teams do. If you had Putin and the Ukrainian head doing that, we won't have wars, we won't have wars in Gaza. It is important. I think we forget that this world is driven by people with very low emotional intelligence. Very smart people, low emotional intelligence, that creates conflicts. Okay, the other one is because of these reasons and even otherwise, very clear evidence that people and organizations as well, it's very important. This is not just an individual thing, it's a collective thing. You find that if you have teams with 1 or 2 people with high degree of EI, it's very effective. The others will look at those leaders and follow. And you immediately start seeing an organization emerging with good degree of collective emotional intelligence, less conflicts, more productive, and so on. I just want to give one slide on happiness. It's something I read when I was a medical student. I used to read Bertrand Russell a lot, and my parents were worried that I was reading a book by an atheist, Bertrand Russell, and Dalai Lama has talked about it. We all have a wrong understanding of happiness. And we, meaning I can talk for myself, I'm generalizing. I'm sure there are wonderful people here with high degree of EI, but generally humanity has the wrongful pursuit of happiness, and people with high EI have a different pursuit of happiness. The confusion is this. We think success leads to happiness. Worldly success, material success. You become a professor of medicine, you buy a house, you do this, that. Everyone loves you, and material success leads to happiness. Wrong way around. Happiness leads to success. If you are a happy person, you are a successful person. That's the only definition of success. We all, everything we do, if you ask someone, do you want money? Someone can say, no, it's up to them. No, I don't like money. You want to be a professor of medicine? No, who wants to be a professor? No. But if you ask anyone, do you want to be happy? Will anyone say no? The only thing no one will deny is happiness. So everything else we do is for that final objective of being peaceful, internally happy, and joyful. All the others are vehicles for happiness, and we confuse the source of happiness with the object of happiness. Right? Coming here and being here, everyone is happy. That is the object, because you are coming together, getting together, all the alumni, but the source is within you. So that's a very important thing. How long do we have? 10 minutes? 10, 15? Yeah. This is the difficult part. I'm going to cop out of this, right? So we understand what emotional intelligence is. We understand that it causes enormous benefits. How do we recognize and follow it? I just want to give few simple messages. It can be developed. It's nothing more than some skills and behaviors. Emotional intelligence, unlike cognitive intelligence, is a set of skills and behaviors. Very little genetic component. There is, of course, some people, this is my nature, my swadharma, I get angry. Yes, that is possible, but it's learned behavior. Because it's learned behavior, it can be enhanced. High emotional intelligence can be, and the evidence is yes. Even an old codger like me can develop further emotional intelligence because of the plasticity of the brain. And I've just put down, I love cricket, Tendulkar, practice, became the cricketer of leading the world. Emotional intelligence can be developed through practice. This is the model of Coleman. There are other models. Just to highlight, when you look at emotional intelligence and the characteristics, you remember it's self versus society. You, myself, versus the rest. And secondly, for each one of that, for yourself and your relationship with the others, you do two things. First thing, awareness. Emotional intelligence starts with recognition. Recognize your emotion. As you begin to get angry, you notice it. Because sometimes we don't. It just comes out and then plays hell. Be aware of your emotions, and it's a practice. It's a question. I don't want to go into meditation and all those things. I'm just giving you some simple example. Recognition of your emotions and recognition of the emotions of other people around you. And then respond to that. Once you recognize it, you can then resolve it and regulate it with practice. It's the same thing, same model. Self-awareness, manage yourself. Social awareness, manage your relationship. Look at some of these things in the boxes. These are all characteristics of people with high EI, empathy. They help people, they manage conflicts. They are very aware of organizational awareness. Emotional high EI people not only look at emotions of individuals, they are aware of emotions of your organization, your institutions. And that make those people very useful leaders because they are aware of the emotions of the organization itself, collective emotions of the organization, of people in that organization. So all these are, I'm not going to go through them. Just a couple of points. There is a misunderstanding in my mind, I might get thrown out by some of the spiritual leaders, that there are two ways of controlling your emotion. Stilling your mind, and a lot of people try to go into that easy path. Let's go for some meditation classes, go and stay in a place. Very difficult. You try it, many of you would have tried it. Try to still your mind, unless your thoughts will keep coming. You must always do that. Yes, mindfulness exercises, meditation exercises, but at the same time, practice the purity of mind. I call it the calmness of mind. How do you do? Practice, practice, practice. Where do you practice? Every day, in your work, at home. How do you practice? By copying. I've said shift the focus. We talk about plagiarism. Don't copy other people's work. But for emotional intelligence, it's all about plagiarism. It's all about copying. Look at other people with high degree of intelligent behavior, emotional intelligence. Copy them every day. Look at people like Gandhi and Mandela and so on. We'll never become a Gandhi or a Mandela, but look at the qualities. 5% of the compassion of Gandhi. 5% of the forgiveness. He forgave the people who put him in jail for 3 decades. We get upset with some people because they said something terrible about us. Forgiveness, 5%. Courage of Lincoln, who changed America and the history of slavery. Give me a shout when I have 2 minutes to go. And I will stop, because this is just some indicators. I'm not going to give you a lecture. I'm just sharing some thoughts. Avoid these guys, right? I had another picture here, but I thought my American friends will get upset and I took it out, right? So people with low cognitive intelligence, if we only had people with emotional intelligence, the wars won't happen. We read about these people, what to do and what not to do, but this is very important. Select your mentors and role models. We sometimes don't do that. Try and look around. This is for the students. Just spend some time. I'm sure there'll be mentors amongst yourself. You don't need to have a professor to be a member. I'm sure there are high level of people, amount of people in your own peer group. Follow them, look at them. Have you read this book? If you have read, my apologies, Tony, it's worth buying. It's just a small book. There's a big book and a small. The Power of Now. Everything happens in the now. Just yesterday happened in the now. Yesterday's now. Tomorrow will happen in the tomorrow's now. The only thing that happens is the now. The past is nothing but memory. The future is nothing but anticipation. There's no past, there's no future. Think about it. Everything happens in the present moment of that time. Because our mind is like a computer. The computer only works in 2 analogs, on, off, 0, 1. The human mind only works in the past, loves to work in the past and the future, never in the present. Test yourself. Most of the time, the background noise is all about, now you're listening to me and saying, today evening, I don't know what to cook for dinner, right? Or what happened yesterday. So, past is important to create experience and learn from it. Future is important to plan and get things done, but not to indulge in the past, waste of time. And the way of the wizards, wise beings, are to thrive in uncertainty. Few things that HK is not here, Professor HK, he said a lot of things. Go and tell him this morning. Amazing. Everything he said was related to emotional intelligence, actually. Blur the boundaries between doctors and nurses, parents and children, staff and students. That's part of the problem. The cognitive intelligence, the ego likes to create walls, build bridges, but without losing your responsibility. You can't say the nurse and the doctor is the same and then everything becomes an acharu. They can have their defined responsibilities, but treat people equally. We are very good as human beings for self-generated attention. If you have to do some piece of work, most of us will do it. If you love to learn music, you will go and learn it. Please don't get seduced by external attention. Social media starting with, gossip starting with. These are all simple things. I'm not lecturing to you, I'm lecturing to myself, right? Please remember that this is a conversation with myself, right? I'm not a person, no way am I saying that, right? But these are things I've learned, I'm sure you have learned. There are many of you here know this. But please cut off WhatsApp groups, except when you need it. small groups of family, the amount of things that goes on. Every time you get disturbed, your mind gets cluttered, your EI goes down. Stop using the WhatsApp unless you have to use it with small friends for a not where there are 300 people in an alumni workshop and you are saying, hi Machan, how are you? And someone say, I'm fine, and everyone gets the information. So be very, very careful and see what's happening in Jaffna at the moment. Seduced by 3 minutes, yeah. And then learn to manage change. Get involved in activities. Don't stay in your own department. I think, again, HK talked about horizontal integration, work across boundaries. And if you do that, when the real change comes, we'll all get hit by some massive change, loss of a loved one, loss of job, some terrible things, and we'll go through all these emotional changes. But if you start working on change management, get involved in, whenever there is when the dean says, let's do something different, general tendency is, my gosh, I would rather not do that. Get involved. People, all these are examples of people with high EI. But if you start doing it yourself, it's a circle. You start moving up the EI curve, invert the pyramid. I've talked about it before. We are not at the top of the pyramid. We are at the bottom of the pyramid. At the top of the pyramid, the base of the pyramid, we carry the team. And as Mandela said, whenever things happen well, give the credit to the team members, leading from behind. They are all characteristics of high EI, and you can practice that. Next time the team wins whatever, just stand behind and give the credit to the team members. And something goes wrong, you stand up and say, yeah, sorry, as the leader of the team, sorry, my mistake, or we made a mistake. Great stuff to do, and you will suddenly find a great weight lifts from your shoulder. You don't need adoration from anyone, you don't need recognition from anyone, because slowly and slowly, step at a time, you get a little bit of peace returning. And my final slide, I have to end up with Socrates. He said something beautiful. The wisdom of all wisdoms is the wisdom of humility. That is one of the most profound statements of high emotional intelligence. We all climb up this competency curve. We start with information, then information plus experience, we become experts, knowledgeable. But wisdom is something doesn't come that easily. I just put humility within. It's not humility. All the other characteristics, forgiveness, saying 3 important words in life, I don't know. Again, we said this morning, ignorance is limitless, knowledge is finite. If you say you are learning every day from students, when you have a teacher, from your peers and everyone, slowly, that's what Socrates said. So I hope you have had some understanding of what emotional intelligence is. I don't think I've taught you, not taught you, had a sharing of thought with you on anything. All this is you can relate to. And that was my intention. As I said, I'm not an expert on EI, I'm not a psychologist. But what I said today, I feel that you can identify with, because you already know it. And the difficulty is, how do you get the wonderful capacity to increase your EI with every single human being has? And every single human being can change because it's acquired behavior. But you have to plagiarize from people with EI and be with them, be role models with them, and just keep on doing it every day, 5%, 10%. Even if we get to 20% of a Gandhi or a 5% of a Mandela, good enough. And this is, again, final slide, Socrates, what he said about EI. He didn't use the word EI. He said, if you are humble, you will be wise. You cannot be wise unless you are humble. Wisdom and humility go with, that's Socrates. And if you're humble and wise, then you are happy. Thank you very much.